Great, thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Cindy Jayne with, yes, it's kind of a mouthful, North Olympic Peninsula Resource Conservation and Development Organization. My co-authors are Kate Dean with the same organization, as well as Sasha Peterson and Jake Bell with Adaptation International. And Sasha is here today. Also Ian Miller with Washington Sea Grant, who presented yesterday on some of the sea level rise work that was part of this project, so some of you may have seen that. Just briefly, NOPRC&D is a collaborative effort amongst organizations in the area, both municipal governments as well as tribal and environmental organizations and educational organizations, community organizations, all working together on both economic and environmental and quality of life initiatives in the North Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. So today I'm going to give a brief overview of the project, talk some about process and engagement of the various partners who have participated in this, just give some example results on vulnerabilities and the priority of the adaptation strategies that were developed for one particular area, one of our 3 focus areas, and then talk about lessons learned. So this is very much a process piece. I'm not going to be covering the results in detail. We do have our results all online, and I'll give you a link at the end to the full report so you can dig into more detail there if you like. So this is the project boundaries. The Olympic Peninsula goes from basically it's Jefferson County and Clallam County. It's about 100,000 population. It includes the cities of Port Townsend, Sequim, Port Angeles, and the major incorporated cities. And then there's also a number of tribes that have been involved. Jamestown Sklallam, Lower Elwha Sklallam, and Makah tribes were all active participants in this. So our project goal was to create a climate change preparation plan for the North Olympic Peninsula to inform both comprehensive planning, kind of tied to some of the questions that just came up, as well as strategic planning processes for the area. It was funded by Washington State Department of Commerce and also Ecology. It's actually EPA money that was managed through Washington State, so we thank those funders quite a bit. The recipient was NOPRC&D, and then the consultants we partnered with were Adaptation International, a consulting firm focusing on helping communities develop climate adaptation plans, as well as Washington Sea Grant with Ian Miller's work. And we ran for about 16 months and just ended last week, so the timing was good for this. Just to give you a high-level overview of the process, we started with conducting a high-level climate assessment and selected the focus areas. It's such a broad, both geographic and scope approach on this. We wanted to narrow it down a bit. We identified vulnerabilities and priorities through 4 workshops that we held in the fall, and then developed and scored adaptation strategies through 3 workshops that were done this past spring. And then our final deliverables were the reports. Presentation results. We've been presenting these results around the North Olympic Peninsula to city councils, to planning commissions, county councils, also to the public, and to some of the PUDs as well. And we're kind of done a few of those already and have a few more that we're working on. Also the sea level rise maps, and we have some examples of those here too. We also have some specific examples of planning language, and yeah, this just came up, great question. So compiled for the particular areas of focus for this project, where we had adaptation strategies that had to do with comprehensive planning. We looked at the broader sets of examples across the country of both comp plan and ordinance examples that were tied to those adaptation strategies, and we summarized those, and then created a monitoring plan for going forward. So the formation of the core team, NOPRC&D, is sort of a great umbrella organization, having these counties, these cities, tribes, range of organizations. We pulled from those organizations to define the core team, and Kate Dean, one of my colleagues, did a great job at getting a really good geographic mix because we have such a broad area. It's 120 miles from Port Townsend to Neah Bay, but it's actually about a 3-hour drive because there's a lot of slow roads from the one spot. So we're trying to manage to have good representation across that wide range, as well as the various types of organizations. So we had city council, county council members, tribal representatives, environmental organizations, a city planner, and a timber industry rep, so a nice cross-section. The core team really helped us identify workshop participants. Having that broad range of core team members was really useful for that. They provided input on the workshops and the overall process, and also helped define the specific deliverables for the project. We had an in-person kickoff team with the core team. We didn't do too many in-person meetings, again, because of the broad geography, but that was a key one to get everyone in one room and try to narrow it down from the get-go. Then we used webinars for the monthly core team calls and for a few partner calls to get the broader set of partners engaged, again, because of that broad geography. And then finally, the Makah. So yeah, you can see in the map there, on the very left side is the Makah tribe in Nia Bay, and they're so far from the other areas, though they actually did attend, they had representatives at all the workshops, but we also did a special trip out there just to be able to provide, gather input from the broader set of participants there. To get the partners to the table took a lot of phone calls, no surprise there, but we really wanted to make sure we had that broad participation. So we had the core team were really involved, the staff were really involved for recruiting that. We did that up front for the first set of workshops, and that really worked well because then we had a nice base going forward for the rest of the project. We presented periodically at local meetings to continue to recruit. We had both NOP-RC&D has its monthly council meetings that had that good representation. We had a Puget Sound Partnership Organization, the Strait Ecosystem, some of the water management teams were good opportunities to be able to keep this in front of people, continue to recruit partners throughout the process. And then finally, we had the final report review was really good for some that weren't able to make the workshops, weren't able to participate at that point. We sent the report out to the whole set of partners and got some really good detailed information about, and we're able to add more detail in the report about specific vulnerabilities and also ideas on adaptation strategies and things already in work. So this is just sort of a visual of the range of people we had involved. We had basically 6 of us that were the project staff, the great core team of 14, but then 175 other partners involved. And I won't go through all these, but you can see kind of the wide range of partners. We had federal agencies, the state agencies, utilities, fisheries. We also had the paper mills. One of the paper mills was quite involved, so really wide range across the community. So the workshops, first we had 4 vulnerability workshops and then 3 adaptation workshops. Those were 6 hours long, 20 to 35 attendees each. Worked pretty well because people didn't have to attend, again, trying to minimize the travel time, having these long all-day things. So a water manager, we had water resource workshop, they came to one workshop in the fall, focused on vulnerabilities, and they came back for one workshop in the spring. So didn't have to be pulled into a lot of different meetings. Then we, for the adaptation workshops, we ended up, the community vitality focus area, and these 4 focus areas were the ones chosen by the core team in that first focusing meeting of water resources, critical infrastructure, ecosystems, and community vitality. Community vitality was, included human health, included tourism, economic impacts. It was very broad and a little bit amorphous, so what we did for the adaptation pieces is really focused on that through those other lenses of water resources and critical infrastructure, how those impact the broader community vitality. And one of the lessons we realized as we were working through the workshops is we had a lot of different people at the table. We had Chamber of Commerce representatives along with water managers, so a really wide range of backgrounds, and trying to figure out the right technical level to present them was a challenge. One of the examples, and not to poke fun of anyone, but one of the questions that came up in the first workshop, someone said, well, our greenhouse gas emissions in the North Olympic Peninsula aren't very high, so we won't have that much climate change impact, correct? So it's just, we had a wide range of understanding, so we realized we needed to backpedal a little bit, provide that common base. We didn't want to focus too much on the overall details and science, but we had to provide enough base that people understood and had a common framework going forward. In general, the wide diversity of partners that came together for these workshops worked really well together, and as we've presented this in other areas, people have commented about how that was, they were surprised at how that worked out. And so we've been thinking a little bit about what made that happen. Partly we're kind of geographically isolated out there in the North Olympic Peninsula, and there is sort of a sense of interdependence. We also often work with each other, these groups, these water management teams, these other organizations. A lot of these players are coming together in other forms and working together and have relationships. We had a scoring process that was used that sort of focus the discussion so it wasn't just a free-for-all of what's your, your biggest concern. We had a structured way to gather everyone's input, got input from every person, specifically set up front. We wanted all input. We wanted to respect all input and gave each person an opportunity to provide that input. So I'm just going to give you just a touch of the results, and these are just examples for critical infrastructure. The key exposures were downtowns, ports and coastlines, floodplains and stormwater, not different, very different from what Tacoma was talking about, sewer and septic systems, and of course the same challenges that have been seen in other areas. So the top strategies, I won't go through these all, but just to give you an idea of sort of the range of strategies, there's everything from updating emergency management and response planning, reducing inflow to wastewater systems, updating the planning documents for sea level rise, doing outreach and education and climate adaptation. So a pretty broad range of adaptation strategies as well because of our broad focus. So just some other lessons we learned throughout the project. Having water managers from different municipalities at the same time, at the same table, discussing climate impacts was really fruitful. I mean, it was great discussions, and I think was just useful in general. This group doesn't have many opportunities to get together, so it was just great sharing of information between them. While there are a wide range of views on climate change in the North Olympic Peninsula, or actually our county council race, it was actually an issue of views, different views on climate change came up. But I think we were somewhat fortunate that having a 6-hour workshop, if you really didn't believe in climate change, you probably weren't going to go attend a 6-hour workshop on climate change. So we had no one trying to kind of derail that process. The breadth and depth of this wide geographic and sort of project scope was a challenge to continue to wrestle with. The initial focusing meeting really helped narrow the focus. We kept the wide geography throughout. We wanted to cover the entire North Olympic Peninsula, so we didn't limit the geography, but we looked for areas where there are commonalities between the different geographies, so the issues that span the different geographies. In general, we leveraged existing research, but the research that Ian Miller presented yesterday on sea level rise was really valuable and a great, really glad we dug into that area in particular, because if you saw the presentation, there's a wide range of sea level rise estimates across the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Tectonic forces impact it, so it's very different in Neah Bay than it is Port Townsend, so having that detail was very, very useful. And it was a participatory process in terms of we had the overall summaries of the impacts and the summaries of the existing research, but getting the specific input from the on-the-ground managers was a participatory process, and the depth depended on who chose to participate. So we got deeper in some areas and less deep in others. So our next steps, since the scope was so broad, it will take a little work for the local municipalities and organizations to take this to the next level. So it's not a plan for Port Townsend currently, but it should be fairly easy to move from what we have and to create specific plans for different municipalities. But that would be the next steps. We're going to use the monitoring plans. So we're going to be continuing to work with the partners to ask for their input and give us updates on what strategies are being implemented as we monitor this over the course of the next few years. And I think that'll also be a good opportunity to just keep this in front of people so they are remembering, oh yes, there's these adaptation strategies, maybe we should look at how we can incorporate these into upcoming work. Certainly the comprehensive plans are a key area we're focused on. A number of the municipalities are in the midst of that process, so that's definitely an opportunity. We also have some great local champions and grassroots organizations that really want to work to continue to move this forward. So with that, thank you, and here's the link for the report, the noprcd.org, where you can find the detailed report. Thank you. Any other questions? Questions? Yeah.
So this is all areas that are planning within the state of Washington. What have you seen in the past, or do you see a trend going into the future where people are starting to plan across state political boundaries, like Washington-Idaho border, or perhaps across the boundaries that are dealing with flooding or other events that would go between the Canadian and the United States border?
Yeah, great question. I can't answer specifically, but I know obviously things like this conference are an example of how there's been great regional collaboration between the different states, and And I know like the National Forest Service and National Parks are collaborating together and also combining in different jurisdictions. So I think there are lots of great examples of collaboration across broader scales also. Other questions? Yeah.
Just a quick one. You mentioned 16 months. Was that sort of start to finish when you fully engaged? Was there a lead-up time to also process?
June, I think we ran that June to October, so that was pretty much the full project. Obviously, there was some planning work, preparing the grant application and all that ahead of time, and some thought processes that started a little bit before that. But in general, that was the 60-month process. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about public engagement. Were the workshops open to the public, or was it invited people, or was that just the core team?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We reached out to specific partners and encouraged them to attend. We didn't limit the participation to if the others did hear about it, and there were some others who heard about it through the grapevine and came, and we were open to that, but we didn't particularly reach out to the public because a lot of those issues, if you're dealing with critical infrastructure, you're dealing with water resources, you want the water managers at the table, you want this, the people who really know the vulnerabilities. And so that is also the next step when taking this to the municipalities. There's a public process that obviously needs to come into play, particularly with comprehensive plans and ordinances of that sort. So that definitely would be part of the next steps as those organizations move this forward. Yeah.
So just to follow up on that, in terms of the public process, you didn't doesn't sound like you necessarily put out a press release or put something in the newspaper that this process is happening, these workshops are happening, and you're all invited.
Correct. We did that recently for the presentations of the results. So that's when we were doing the outreach to the public. So we had a press release out on that. We've certainly been trying to spread the word and do that. And that, of course, is good for helping build the momentum and the support for moving these strategies forward.
Did you get any blowback from that?
Not yet. Not yet.
Why didn't I know about this?
Oh, yes. That has come up. That has come up. And what we had said is that, right, we were reaching out to the partners who had the expertise in these particular areas to move it in detail, and that before it becomes policy, that is the role of the jurisdictions to go through that public process at that time. So, yeah.
Were climate change mitigation measures like renewable energy or energy efficiency included in the discussion?
Great question. No, they were not, and it was a matter of scope. We had quite a broad scope as it was, and so it's such a different beast. I do a lot of volunteer work related to the mitigation side. Totally agree. We make that point in the public meetings that mitigation is important. That's certainly equally important as adaptation, but yeah, just due to scope, we limited it. Yep.
Were there any surprises for you when you sort of looked at the kinds of recommendations that came out in the
Any surprises? I don't know that there were any. I don't know if any jump out for you, Sasha. There's none. I can't think of anything that was terribly surprising. I mean, you're going to certainly as the talks with across this week and the different workshop. It's very common. I think that we're seeing very similar issues across those. So certainly the key vulnerabilities were fairly similar. I don't know that there was any particular surprises. Yeah.
Sort of a general question. In that region, are they talking more about defending the current infrastructure or acknowledging when it's time to move it? Because I don't count on my sister. With parts of that make me big trouble. Defending it is hard.
Yeah.
So is that part of the discussion?
Yeah, it's certainly right. It's looking at sort of the where you can protect, where needing to retreat. Ultimately, it's all on the table, and it will depend on the particular situation as to what the right strategy is. So, yeah. Good. I think we're out of time. So thank you.